Part 1. Before the Storm. School lunch. It's the most disgusting thing imaginable. Who in their right mind could enjoy this? I can't help but wonder if the so-called chefs are actually making the slop. I push the tray away, the nauseating smell still lingering as I stand, preparing to head back to class. Our school isn't large. It sits in a small, quiet town with just over 500 residents, so everything feels cramped and familiar, except for the creeping unease that comes with each passing day. The cafeteria is dimly lit, with upstairs leading up to the right and the main entrance beside them. Two shadowy hallways stretch out to the left, like dark veins running through the building, leading to the classrooms. My class is at the far end of the longest hall, where the lights seem to flicker more often, and the silence hangs heavier. As I walk, the air feels thick, each step echoing in the quiet. The teacher's voice drones on, a monotonous hum, but I'm not listening. My eyes are drawn to the window, where rain pounds against the glass like cold fingers tapping to be let in. It feels like this is every day, an endless loop of rain and routine. Then, something strange happens. The ground shudders beneath me, not violently, but in a low, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat coming from deep underground. I know it must be coming from the military base just across the road. There are always rumors about that place. Experiments, strange tests, things no one dares to talk about out loud. The bell rings, the first warning bell signaling the 6th grade class change. I rise, distracted, and turn to my friends. We talk about graduation, the excitement clouded by the same uneasy feeling that has settled into my bones. The ground is still vibrating beneath us. "What do you think that rumbling is?" I ask, my voice quieter than I intended. Jenny shrugs, her face pale in the dim light. "It's probably them firing guns at the base," she says, though there's no confidence in her voice. Suddenly, the crackling of the intercom snaps through the room. The principal's voice, unnervingly calm, echoes through the speakers. "We are going into lockdown. Close all blinds and lock the doors." A cold chill crawls up my spine. I'm closest to the window, so I move to close the blinds. But as my fingers touch the fabric, I freeze. There, on the other side of the glass, is a gigantic eye, its pupil darting frantically, scanning the room. The iris is so large, so disturbingly human, but it doesn't belong to anything human at all. Screams erupt around me, sharp and panicked. The room plunges into chaos, and in that moment, it feels like the world has slipped into madness. Hell has broken loose, and we are trapped inside it. Part 2. Hell. The eye vanished, replaced by a bloated, grotesque body, its flesh rippling unnaturally. Then came the fist. It smashed through the window with a deafening crash, glass flying everywhere. Before we could react, it grabbed the teacher, her screams piercing the air. "Help me!" she shrieked, but her voice was silenced as the creature shoved her into its gaping maw, swallowing her whole. Panic exploded. The door was flung open, and we all bolted. Then, a loud crash echoed down the hall. The creatures had reached the building. They filled the hallway, their twisted, bloated forms forcing their way in. They looked almost human, but no human could look like that. I ran, heart pounding, pushing past crying 6th graders, past the kids stupidly recording everything. My friends followed, but it hit me then. No matter who was beside me, I was on my own. I heard Jenny scream. I glanced back just in time to see the creature grab her by the legs, then shift its grip to her head. A sickening crunch, and her head burst like a ripe melon. The thing shoved her body into its mouth. I had to keep moving. There were 5, no, more of them now, grotesque things filling the halls, devouring students and teachers. I reached the main hallway. The military. They'll save us, right? But no. They locked the doors. Why are they leaving us? I bolted into the janitor's closet, my hands shaking as I locked the door behind me. The air was thick with silence. No screams. Just the sound of chewing. My breath hitched. Am I going to die here? I shifted slightly, and the mop clattered to the floor. I froze. The door was ripped off its hinges, and I scrambled up a shelf, trying to stay out of sight. The thing's arm reached in, blindly feeling for me. My chest tightened. I couldn't stay here forever. The second it withdrew, I made a break for it. They saw me. Their bodies slithered and crawled after me, filling the hallway. The only sound was their hands slapping against the ground, getting closer. I made a sharp right and ran into the gym at the end of the hall. I threw some chairs in front of the door and stumbled to the middle of the room. The silence was unnerving. The lights were dim and bloodstains painted the floor. I stood there, breathing hard, but then I heard it. Something on the roof. A scraping sound, slow and deliberate. My heart raced. Then a crack. I wasn't fast enough. I looked down. A metal pipe had pierced my foot, nailing me to the ground. Pain shot through me as I pulled it out. My foot was barely attached. I collapsed, my strength leaving me. I started to crawl, dragging myself across the blood-streaked floor, my breath shallow. Part 3. Survival of the fittest. I crawled down the long, dim hallway, my heart hammering in my chest. Behind me, the creature slithered out of the gym, its grotesque form moving with terrifying speed. I pushed myself up, not caring if my foot gave out or worse. I needed to run. Each step sent shockwaves of pain up my leg, but I refused to stop. I could feel the bones in my foot crunching beneath me, the flesh tearing, but something primal kept me moving. I reached the cafeteria, where the last few survivors huddled together. The creature was closing in fast, faster than I thought possible. I was almost at the door when I tripped. With a sickening rip, my foot tore off. I screamed, the pain blinding, but I kept crawling. The door was just a few feet away. I could feel the creature's breath on my neck, its hand gripping my shirt. I was done for. But luck, if it could be called that, was on my side. Someone grabbed me, dragging me into the cafeteria just before the creature could get me. The door slammed shut and they locked it. I lay there, gasping, as someone tied a makeshift tourniquet around the stump of my leg. My vision swam, and I barely registered the words around me. "We need to leave, now the military's outside," someone said. I wanted to warn them. The military wasn't here to save us. They'd already abandoned us, but I was too dazed to speak. She opened the door, and the sound of a shotgun blast echoed through the room. I turned, and where she had stood, there was now a gaping hole in her torso. She crumpled to the ground, the door still wide open. Gunfire erupted. I scrambled into the kitchen, heart pounding, knowing what was coming next. "Clear," one of the soldiers yelled. "We got one left. I found him." A soldier stood over me, his shadow stretching long in the flickering light. He didn't kill me, though. He grabbed me roughly and hauled me outside, throwing me onto the ground. "No witnesses," he muttered coldly. The largest creature loomed behind me, its grotesque form casting a dark shadow over everything. I could hear my mom screaming from the crowd gathered around the school, the whole town watching helplessly. "My baby!" Her voice was distant, almost lost to me. The creature's eyes locked onto me, noticing the small cut on my neck. Slowly, it slid a finger under my skin, pulling it back like peeling paper. My body went numb as the world slipped into darkness. I was gone. Part 4. No witnesses. The news host sprinted to her car, heart racing as if she could outrun the nightmare unfolding around her. She barely had time to think as she sped toward the station. Bursting through the door, she shouted, "I have a story we need to." Before she could finish, the studio door flew open with a deafening crash. Soldiers stormed in, guns blazing. Chaos erupted, bullets ripping through cameras, lights, and people. "No witnesses," one soldier muttered coldly, turning toward her. She tried to scream, but before she could, the needle pierced her neck. An icy liquid flooded her veins and her entire body went numb. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. Paralyzed, trapped in her own body.